You know, there's a quiet but really big shift happening in education right now. More and more parents of kids with special needs are deciding to homeschool. So, what's behind this huge trend, and what kind of tools are these parents using to make it work at home? Let's dive in.
So just how big are we talking? Get this, a full 38% of all homeschooled children have special needs. To put that into perspective, that is nearly 3 times the rate you'd find in the public school system. Wow!
That number just makes you stop and ask, why? What is pushing so many parents away from traditional schools? And what are they finding in homeschooling that's a better fit for their kids?
Okay, so first up, let's get into the push factors. The reasons parents decide to leave the public school system are, they're complicated, but they almost always boil down to one central problem.
And here it is. This is the main reason right here. A staggering 61% of these kids were pulled from school because they just weren't making enough progress. We're not talking about small hiccups. For the majority of these families, the system was fundamentally failing to get the results their kids needed.
Now, this whole lack of progress thing is often connected to a really troubling idea called student pushout. And let's be super clear here. This isn't about students just deciding to leave. It's about school practices, things like really unwelcoming environments or strict zero-tolerance policies that basically push students out the door.
And for parents of children with special needs, you can imagine, this feels intensely personal. They often have a legal document, an IEP, that's supposed to guarantee their child gets support. But so many parents find that either the plan isn't being followed at all, or the plan itself is just a terrible fit for their child.
So what happens is you get this really combative us versus them relationship. Listen to this quote from one source. Some districts use taxpayer dollars to lawyer up against parents who demand services under the law. Just think about that. When you're forced to fight the system instead of working with it, you can see why homeschooling starts to look like a safe harbor.
Okay, so that's the why. That's the challenge. Now let's flip the script and talk about the what. What exactly are the advantages of homeschooling, and what's in this toolkit that parents are using to succeed?
Well, when you boil it all down, the biggest difference comes down to one word: flexibility. Public school is built on a set curriculum, a big group environment, and a totally fixed schedule. Homeschooling just flips that on its head. The curriculum is flexible, learning can happen literally anywhere, and the schedule adapts to the child, not the other way around.
And that flexibility, it unlocks some seriously powerful benefits. It means you can build a learning plan that is 100% individualized. If a lesson isn't landing, you can change it on the spot. You can cut down on distractions to help your child focus. And at the end of the day, when you can tailor everything to your child, it just lowers the anxiety for everybody involved.
All right, so that all sounds great in theory, but what does this actually look like day to day? Let's dig into some real, concrete strategies for success.
To make this super real, let's just take a common challenge as an example: ADHD. How can the flexibility we just talked about directly help a child with ADHD? First, you gotta know what you're working with, right? Kids with ADHD often find it hard to concentrate, they can really struggle to finish things, their mind wanders, and they might be fidgety or impulsive. A traditional classroom with 30 other kids can make these challenges 100 times harder.
So here's one of the most powerful tools in that homeschool toolkit. It's a research-backed method called multi-sensory instruction. The whole idea is that you teach by engaging more than one sense at a time. So you're using sight, sound, touch, and movement to really help the brain lock in information and build memory.
And this isn't just, a fun idea. It's a really structured approach. It's systematic, which means you teach things in a logical order, building on what the child already knows. It's direct, meaning you're explicitly teaching everything, not just hoping they pick it up. And it's diagnostic, which means you're always adjusting your plan based on what your child has mastered.
That idea of structure also applies to the daily routine. There's this myth that homeschooling is just a free-for-all, but for many kids with special needs, routine is absolutely critical. The trick is to build a routine that's also flexible. You start small, you're realistic, and you're always willing to adapt if something's not working. The routine gives security, but the flexibility is where the magic happens.
So, you've got this flexible curriculum, you've got these cool multisensory strategies, and you've got a routine that's both structured and adaptable. So how do you pull all that together? Well, it all gets organized in one key document: a Homeschool Individualized Education Program, or IEP.
And the best way to think of this homeschool IEP is like your own personal roadmap. You start with present levels. That's basically your "you are here" pin on the map. Then you list your accommodations. Those are the tools and strategies for the journey. You set measurable goals. That's your destination. And you have goal tracking to make sure you're actually on the right path. Which brings us to our final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle, embracing your role as your child's #1 expert.
Because really, this entire journey is built on one simple, powerful truth. As one expert puts it, you are an expert in your child, period. You know their strengths, their struggles, their quirks, and their passions better than anyone on the planet.
Success in homeschooling isn't about being a perfect teacher or having a perfect classroom. It's about trusting that expertise you already have. It's about creating a positive day and being flexible enough to find what works for your child right now in this moment.
And that really leaves us with one final, empowering question to think about. Once you're free from the limits of a system that maybe wasn't working, what does your child's unique, amazing success story look like?